Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker and I'll be your host. And today, we're going to talk about the thing that everybody wants to do is do less and at the same time achieve more. Like, duh, of course we want that, but why can't we do it? So today we're going to talk to Ari Meisel. He's the founder of Less Doing. And, he's got the answers to everything, or at least that core question of what we're looking for. So Ari, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Penny.
We've interviewed a couple times before, and I always, take away some new perspectives. And actually, I want people to hear about your story because I think it's really powerful in understanding the perspective shift that you were forced to have that had you, start to think a little bit differently. So, why did you get in on this mission and this passion around doing less?
Yeah, I feel like it's like some of the best businesses like choose you, not the other way around. I was working in real estate development in upstate New York and just working a very, very hard sort of lifestyle and was under a lot of stress. And when I was 23, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which just really sort of knocked me down and made it pretty much impossible to create that kind of an output. So I had a lot less time, a lot less energy to get things done. And after a long process of tracking, self-experimentation, I was able to get off all my meds and start to overcome the illness. But the real strides came when I started to experiment with and create a brand new system of productivity, which I would call less doing, as in less doing, more living. And the overarching idea there was to show people how to optimize, automate, and outsource everything in their lives and businesses in order to be more effective. And so
wait, before you go any further, let me interrupt you for 1 second, because I want people to think about, because I think this is an area of a huge perspective shift, is what if for some unforeseen reason, and I want the people who are listening, think about this, all of a sudden, instead of having 8 hours a day or however many you take, 15 hours a day to work, let's say that you only have 4 hours. Let's just do, 4 hours. You have half a day. I know you might have even had less than that, but I want people to imagine what would happen in your perspective shift, in the way that you create priorities, in the way that you look at anything and everything that you do. Like, I think that in itself is just like an eye-opening wake up.
Yeah. And so it's actually an important thing for people to think about, because so the number for me was more like an hour.
It's crazy. Like, how do you get anything done in an hour?
Well, so the question actually at that point really becomes, what aren't you going to do? Which is nice. So I love doing that experiment with people, because you say to somebody that works 9 to 5, for example, you say, look, you have to leave the office by 4 o'clock. What are you going to do differently? That's easy. Anybody will be like, I'll skip lunch, or I'll shorten one call or whatever. But then you say that, what would you do if you only had an hour? It's a totally different way of thinking about it. And
it's a dramatic change, right? And it's that dramatic change that creates you to think differently. Like you said, incremental change doesn't really get us to think differently. It's really dramatic change.
Well, it's also, another way of looking at it too is, do you know Snap-on tools?
I haven't heard of that. Snap-on?
So Snap-on tools is, You can't buy them anywhere. Basically, there's a Snap-on tool truck that goes just to professional garages and stuff. And they're some of the best tools that you can buy. They're gorgeous. They have all these wonderful sets. It's wonderful. And they're arguably some of the best tools there are.
It's for me.
For a card, or for a car rather, but if somebody wanted you to work on a spaceship you couldn't use those tools, right? So it's just, those tools don't work in this scenario. Right. So that's the kind of thing. You have to come up with a completely new set of tools and completely new methods when that's the challenge. So that's a lot of my productivity advice, and a lot of the things that I teach people are very counterintuitive and very counter to what a lot of other productivity people teach.
Interesting. And that's good, right? And I just want to point out, when you talked about tools, I want everybody to also think about the main tool that we have, which is our brain, right? Is our mindset. So it also requires a different mindset. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. So I actually love to say that I am tool agnostic, right? So like I love tech and I love lots of tools and I recommend lots of tools, but I always try to temper that and tell people that, you know, technology will merely amplify habits. So if you have good habits, it will make them better. And if you have bad habits, it will make them way worse, way faster. So I am always looking at that mindset shift that needs to take place first. And a lot of it really is that there's so much psychology wrapped up in what makes people more or less productive.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I love that. So let's talk about the point of the counterintuitive. It's counterproductive. So, or not so counterintuitive. It's very productive and counterintuitive. So what is that? Like, give us, what do you mean by that? And give us an example.
So one thing is I'm very anti to-do list. You know, so a lot of times the question is like, what's the best to-do list, or how should I manage a to-do list? And my question is get rid of it, or my response is get rid of it.
Right. And so why is that?
99% of people do to-do lists wrong in terms of what psychology requires of us. And the biggest issue with most to-do lists is that they're very static. So I don't care if you're using like a really nice notebook or you're using some fancy app or something like that. Most people do it wrong, and they don't treat to-do lists like an assembly line, which we really need to do. To-do lists need to have movement to them in some sense. That so at the very base level, you want to have some form of to-do, doing, and done in that like format. So that's something known as Kanban, which is a Japanese project management schema from 80 years ago from Toyota basically. And you can do this with tools like Trello, which I love Trello, but you can do this with Post-it notes on a wall too. And it's so important to have that sense of movement. And to do, doing, done is basically the loose sort of scheme. You know, if you're a real estate broker, to do, doing, done might look like lead, prospective property, visited once, offer made, negotiation, and then closed and whatever. But that's still this arc of to do, doing, done. Something that is on deck, something that we're doing now, and something that we did. And it gives that sense of velocity and movement. So not only can we just psychologically be motivated by that movement, we're moving towards a goal, but we also get a sense of how long things take and shouldn't take, this sort of 50,000 foot overview. So it's a lot of people do to-do lists in a static, and a lot of people do to-do lists flipped on their side, which they organize things the wrong way. They organize things categorically rather than by phase. Okay, so
if I'm hearing you right, so the best way to organize the way that we're doing things is by the like as a project and the phases of which it is to get them done. So we should be really managing our tasks and activities based on projects. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, exactly. Treat things like an assembly line, literally, right? So like that way, where things break, you can fix them in that way, where things are getting held up. So that leads into the second one for me, which is a lot of people love the all-in-one softwares. And is there an all-in-one software? Get out of town. That's our brain. Well, when they have that even in their marketing, that's a big no-no for me. So I'm like, that's a hard no for me. It's a deal breaker actually when something is an all-in-one software, because I did this thing on social media a few weeks ago where I put two pictures. One was of this gray box with an on-off switch on, and the other one was a Rube Goldberg machine. And I said, which kind of process would you prefer in your business? And a lot of people said the black box. And I said, never in a million years would I want the black box. I would go with the Rube Goldberg machine 10 times out of 10, because yes, I might have to duct tape together 7 different kinds of automation processes and tools. But if something doesn't work, I know where and why. If I want to change something, I can do that. I don't have to hire the Infusionsoft specialist to come in and open the black box and fix it. So that's another one. It's like people always are looking for that like one piece of software that's going to fix everything. And it just doesn't work like that. It's a wrong way to go at it. CRMs are a great example of that. So probably one of the most common questions that I get once a week, like, what's your favorite CRM? And I usually answer like, what do you need a CRM for? And I can build a CRM in Trello that's better than 80% of the CRMs out there, and you can do it in about 15 minutes.
And that's because it's following the phased approach that you're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, and yes, and you can automate it where you need to. And now I can actually tie in machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms to suss out better prospects versus not, and follow-ups and all that kind of stuff. And you keep it simple. You don't need people tend to pay for 80% of the features that they don't use.
Totally. And simplicity is so important, because the more complex that it gets, the the more we tend to procrastinate or end up in perfectionism, right? So it helps us to keep moving, to create that traction and to keep moving and to communicate it to others.
Yep.
Right? If you have a complex process, how are you going to delegate that to somebody else? It's going to be a lot more difficult. I think that's why people hold on to things too. Oh, it's too complex.
Yeah. So there's another one that people do wrong is how they document processes. So again, kind of reverse for me is we actually, it's our trademark POS process. So not piece of, something, it's process optimization system. And it's because it's a reverse thing. So what a lot of people will do is they'll screencast a process, send it to a VA somewhere and say, do the process. And that's a problem because most people are not efficient at relaying they're not efficient at relaying the sort of processes in their head. They'll leave out parts that they just sort of inherently know without even realizing it. The better way to do it is to take the screencast, give it to the VA or whoever, anyone who's never seen it, and say, watch the video, now you write the process. And then further to that, don't give it back to me. Give it to a third person who's never seen it before and have them run through the process. It will never work. 10 times out of 10, that's going to fail. And it's great because they're going to get to step 3 and say like, oh, I don't understand how you got from here to 4. And then you fix it. And what you end up with is a process that works at a tertiary level that is unbreakable. And you could literally pull somebody in off the street and have them go through that process without there being an error. And then training costs go down too. So, I mean, it's a much better approach to it.
Totally. I believe in that wholeheartedly because I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and business people who we needed to, optimize the way that they were doing things and delegate certain pieces. And they didn't want to hand over the process and they didn't even know what the process was. And I had somebody follow them and document the process and ask them questions as they were going through. Right. So that they didn't have to do it. So they felt, well, thank God, I don't mind doing it as long as I don't have to do it. Somebody else. And of course, then it needs to make sense, like you said, to somebody who doesn't do it on a day-to-day basis and then see if it works by having them do it. So I think that's a brilliant and really smart and practical and pragmatic approach.
The thing that you said about asking somebody questions along the way too is a really good one as well when you have something that's very qualitative. So every business, whether it's the founder, it's usually the founder, but not always, there's somebody who just like, they know how to pick a winner, so like they know, right.
But it's in their black box.
It's their black box, exactly. So I had this guy I was talking to, was a lawyer, and he said that the biggest challenge in their business is that his father, who's the senior partner, is a huge bottleneck because all of the 6 junior partners have to basically have the senior partner review everything that they send out. And I said, have you ever documented a process for that? And he's like, oh yeah, we have a whole process for how we do that. I was like, no, have you documented the process for his review? He's like, no, it's all like just how he does it. I was like, just watch him do it and ask him why he makes a change here or a change there. And then you have a process.
Right. Exactly. Some of the best processes are the processes in people's heads, right? The way that's they're experts in their space and all that experience is in there and they don't know how to get it out. Right. So it is through those questions that people can ask that make them then think about it. Like, oh, well, actually what I'm doing is I'm looking at X, Y, and Z, and then, you break it down.
Right.
By the way, what do you have up there? You're going to be doing a pull-up? You have a bar above you?
Oh, no, it's just my shelf up here.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for you to do a pull-up there, and I was that's
just
productive.
Like hanging on it sometimes.
Exercising during a podcast.
I just hang on it sometimes.
That's cool. Well, movement is important, right? To keep us fresh.
Of course.
So, I know you've dedicated so many years to this topic, and you've got some great books out there. Little Birdie has it that you have a new book coming out. What's it's called? Well, you tell us about it.
So it's called The Replaceable Founder, and so it's actually my 9th book actually, and the focus really here is on business growth. So when Less Doing started, it was really around personal productivity, and there are 9 fundamentals to that system, which is what the first 2 books are based on. And now I've parlayed that into 9 fundamentals for growing a business, broken down into 3 main areas of communication, project management, and processes. And it's I've taught it as a course, and we've just seen really incredible results with the businesses that have gone through it. And a lot of it is about removing bottlenecks. And to me, I'm always trying to help people be as replaceable as possible without actually replacing them. And if you use that as a goal, you end up removing yourself as a liability from your company and everybody else. So I had a team of 7 people in my company 8 months ago, and now I have 3. And those four people replaced themselves, and the other 3 replaced themselves and then took on bigger things.
Right.
So we're always trying to make people as replaceable as possible. And one of the metrics that we look at with our business as well as our clients is something called days to departure. So that's basically how many days you notice you'd have to give before you could go on vacation. And for me, it's 0, which is really great. And it should never be more than 3 or 4, basically. So the replaceable founder really helps you get out of your own way and let the natural growth that should be happening happen. And that's coming
really
out
cool.
in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's coming out in a couple weeks.
Yes.
So, we're not quite towards the end. I want to pick your brain a little bit more, but where would they go to either reserve a copy or to get it when it's available?
So the best place is to get on our mailing list, so people can actually go to less.do/penny.
Less.do/penny. All right.
Yeah. And so we have this blueprint that they can download there, but they'll get on the mailing list, and those are the people who are going to find out first about when it's available. And it should be, I think, just at the end of September is when it'll be available on Amazon.
Okay, awesome. And I want to, for you guys listening, you want to get on this list because, Ari, you think differently, right? And I think that is the way that people need to look at things. Like, that's a really unique approach, is the days to departure. And the value that brings. Well, we all know when we go on vacation, we get a lot more productive, right? So you get in that vacation mindset to all of a sudden say no to a lot of things that aren't really important and so forth. But that idea of that the goal is to replace yourself is so important, because very often I see as well is that the owners of business or people in key roles, they get caught up in the minutia and things that really they shouldn't be caught up in, because they're the creative thinkers. They should be the ones that are troubleshooting and innovating and being free and flexible. And they're not able to be creative and free and flexible when they're in the minutia. Then they see the same perspective as everyone else in the company, right?
Right.
And the only way to be able to get out of that, and I know that they do this in the military, and they teach that, because I was just did a presentation workshop, and they wanted me to integrate extreme ownership. And they talk about in the military how they do that so that the leaders aren't caught up in the minutia, and that they can see the project plan, right, the mission from a different perspective, so that they can identify where those bottlenecks are, for instance, and identify those things. So I think that's a super important point for all entrepreneurs and all business people to set up the processes and organize themselves in such a way that they can replace themselves. It's critical.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Again, if you're not replaceable, then you're a liability. It's just that simple.
That's awesome. You're not replaceable. You're a liability. Love it. I got to write that down so that I can tweet it, because I'm not multitasking while we're talking. I'm
Fine by me. Women are better at it than men, so.
That's what they say. I'd like to agree with that, but the scientists tell us that nobody's good at it, right?
That's true. Nobody's actually good at it. Yeah.
So it's one of those things, right? And maybe we can talk about that for a minute. It's one of those things that feels good, right? And you feel like it's making progress, or that like it's making you more productive, but it's not. How do we deal with those things where our brain tricks us and makes us think and feel good about it, but at the same time, it's creating more mistakes and actually counterproductive?
Multitasking, you mean?
Multitasking, but it shows up in other areas in our life too, doesn't it? Where it feels good, so we do it, and we think it's the right thing, but it's actually not bringing us closer to our goal. Like saying yes and getting into the minutia and taking over somebody's problem versus coaching them to solve it themselves, or you know what I mean?
I mean, it's a constant struggle. Like, it really is, and I fall prey to it every now and then as well.
You're human? Thank God.
For the most part. I have 4 small children, so most of my humanity goes to them. But yeah, I mean, no one's perfect at it, right? It's just, the thing is to recognize that and see see, like have a 20/20 hindsight vision, because a lot of people just sort of do it and then move on from it, and then they wonder what happened. Which is, by the way, like classic overwhelm, right? We as human beings we can handle a lot of crap being thrown at us, but we get on autopilot mode at some point, right? Like you hit your threshold, then you're just like, all right, I'm just dumping water on fires, right? I'm not actually thinking about it. I'm just going through the motions, and I'll get it done eventually, but it's never going to stop, and I'm never going to take that time to get out of the rut and figure it out. So just sort of making that a habit is really important. And as far as multitasking, so multitasking doesn't exist. Parallel tasking is something that I do believe in. And parallel tasking is where you kind of just like flick the domino on several different things and let them go into motion, not dependent on you. And then you can go back to what you're doing. So it doesn't actually take away your focus from what you're doing, and you can set things in motion.
That's my favorite thing. Like, I love to delegate something and then to know that progress is happening and I'm not doing it. I love that. It makes me feel so good. So there's some sources that I use to make that happen. And yeah, I love it every time. And then when I get a delivery, I'm like super, excited and proud of myself for just putting it in motion.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite tools and resources? Obviously they're gonna get your new book and they're gonna get on your list. But just give us a preview of some of the things that you would say if they didn't have all of that information available to them. What are like the 2 or 3 tools that you think could really boost somebody's?
I mean, the two top tools that I always recommend when I'm working with business, it comes up almost all the time. I just talked to somebody from a political campaign. I've worked with the Army. Like, there's all sorts of Trello and Intercom are the two sort of like game changers for me. Intercom is basically turns company communications into a team sport, basically. Wouldn't
that be cool? So does that make it fun? Is that what that means?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely like gamifies it. There's no question. And then Trello is just, in my opinion, the best project management tool there is, and you can use it. It's so flexible. You can use it as CRM. You can use it for actual organization, for team project management, for personal task management. It's pretty essential.
That's awesome. And, I just did actually doing a new series with product reviews, right? So that people can hear from people, not from the company that's producing the product, but from people who are using the product and how they're using it and what they're getting out of that. So how do you personally use Trello, for instance, that like if you say you use it for CRM, give us some insight as to how that's set up and how you make that work.
So, so I have 3 main Trello boards that I use. One is called Tech Talk Tuesday. So I do this thing every 2 weeks called Tech Talk Tuesday, which is like the newest productivity tips, articles, studies, apps that I found. And all of that is automatically populated for me by a machine learning algorithm that I created from a company, a service called Monkey Learn, which is an amazing thing. So Monkey Learn basically will look at blog posts from 200 different websites, as well as product hunt and a few other things. And based on how I've taught it that I pick things that I think are interesting, it populates that Trello board with cards for each item. And then I can go in and I can move it to basically the good list, or I can archive it. If I archive it, it goes back to the Monkey Learn algorithm and teaches it further that this was a bad one. And if I move it to the next list, it says that it's a good one, and it reinforces it that way. So, yeah.
That's cool. That is really awesome. So you've automated that process. So you almost don't even write your blog. You just teach it. You like invest in the teaching of the learning system, so that you review it. It's not that you don't write it. You review it, and then it goes up. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and so it's actually something I do as like a webinar every 2 weeks. So that's where that material comes from. And then we have a team board that's all of the tasks that we're working on as a team, so I can assign it to different people, see where I'm the bottleneck, where I'm responsible for things, where they are. And then I have a board that's just for members of my mastermind coaching program called the Listing Leaders, with literally, it's like a picture of each person and their sort of profile. And if, they have been with the program for 2 months, they're labeled as one thing. If it's 4 months, the labels automatically change. So we just have I can look at any given time and see like who my newbies are and who my old ones are and whatever. It's great. And I have all their pictures in there.
Cool. And so what tools would you use to have them change labels and things like that?
Zapier for short. So Zapier is the glue that ties together all these other tools.
That's awesome. And so do you work with a service, or you have people on your team that create these apps for you and create these integrations?
Do I have what?
Do you work with like an outsourced organization, or do you work with somebody in your organization that creates the apps and every time you have a new automation that makes that work for you?
So I definitely like to get under the hood. There's no question. But I've trained a couple people on my team they're really good with that. But there's also a service actually called Automation Agency that's based out of Australia that is great. They're $249 a month for unlimited automation tasks. They're pretty cool. So they can do Zapier, they can do Infusionsoft, they can do kind of any of those things as it were. So, but no, we do everything in-house now.
Okay, cool. And I guess I was getting at that because there's a lot of people who are on the call who go, wow, this stuff is great. But the default in their mind goes, but I don't have the time, right? Or I don't have the skills to learn this new tool and then create this integration. So I want to look for ways that they can challenge that thing in their head to say, well, actually you can. There are services or there are people, right, that you could go to that already have this expertise, right? I think it's an entrepreneur's curse where we think we have to do everything. And I say we because I've gotten caught up in that. And we have to, like I said, I love to give things away when I can. And that's because I learned the hard way that I take too many things on. And I still do from time to time. So I have to look at, where can I find somebody that can do this for me, that can do this specialized thing.
Right.
So you've got this automation agency, and I'll look for everybody who's listening. I'll look to get these links, onto the blog post and the podcast so that you guys can get access to these. And of course, getting on Ari's list is going to get you access to what they do is they actually open up his head and they use a monkey learning tool to put a node to your head and to his head. That's what it is if you're in his mastermind, is they node it directly from his head to your head.
I'd like to joke that I want to get to the point where my team just sort of rolls me out when they need me and then puts me away.
That's awesome. Well, our time's coming to an end. I love, talking to you and hearing about what you've got going. Is there any last words of wisdom, advice or anything that you want to share with this audience before we sign out?
Yeah, really quick, I would just say that the optimize, automate, outsource methodology is a really important, there's an order to that matters. And the reason that outsourcing is last is because it's supposed to be. A lot of people make a mistake by outsourcing first. So they'll just be like, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to hire someone to do it. And then you take something that you don't really understand or you're frustrated with and give it to somebody who has less information, context, and training than you do, and you expect this magical result. It's the reason why most people have bad experiences outsourcing. So you really have to start with optimization, looking at what you're doing, how you're doing it, intrinsically figuring out the inefficiencies in whatever process, then automate what you can, which nowadays is almost everything. And then that's when you look at giving it to some sort of outsourced specialist or generalist. So keep that order in mind when you're looking at your business challenges.
Totally. I was thinking about this today when I forget what I was doing. And I was thinking about, sometimes to solve a problem, I just throw money at it, right? So that would be like outsourcing, just throw money at it and I'm bound to solve it. And really, we all know that doesn't work, right? So that's why you having this, making that point is really critical. It's optimizing it first, understanding where the bottlenecks are, and then automating what you can, and then at a last source, outsourcing it. So that's awesome. The first step is never to throw money at it; it's to understand it.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ari. You're awesome. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Penny. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. I know that you got a lot of value out of today's show. And I want you to make sure that you get over to Ari's site. And let me read that out again. I did write it down. It is, tell me, Ari, what is it?
Less.do/penny.
Here it is. Less.do/penny. Go there, sign up, get on his list, and look forward to his new book that's coming out, which is The Replaceable Founder. So thanks again, Ari, and we'll see you all in the next show.
Thank you.
This is Penny Zenker. Take back time. See you, everybody.